Hi, and welcome to Schools in Focus, an 1105 media podcast. I'm your host, Matt Jones, Senior Editor of Spaces for Learning. Our guests today are Timothy Nyblom, Director of End User Business Development for Higher Education with HID Global, and Jeremy Fromm, Mercury Security Evangelist with Mercury Security. They're here to talk about building access control in K-12 and higher education institutions. They'll walk us through the benefits of using an open architecture system, as well as some of the necessary technical aspects and how they fit within the larger vertical. This episode is sponsored by HID Global. Hi everybody, and welcome to Schools in Focus. I'm your host, Matt Jones, and with me today are Timothy Nyblom, Director of End User Business Development for Higher Education with HID Global, and Jeremy Fromm, Mercury Security Evangelist with Mercury Security. Tim, Jeremy, thanks so much for being here and chatting with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, thanks for
Yep.
having a repeat guest. Much appreciated.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, no, we're happy to have you back.
You must be popular, Tim.
before
If they have you back, you must be a popular guest.
Before we get started, I was wondering if you could each just tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional background.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. So I've been in the physical security industry now for nearly 20 years. Have spent my time in the higher education vertical exclusively. So I've seen, the changes, since really 2006 up until now, talking about cards and printers and software and biometrics and interoperability, credentials, now mobile credentials, controllers, and everything in between. So it's been quite a journey. I've been always focused on end users and basically, helping them educate, being a trusted advisor, and sharing as much information as I can so they make the best decision for their university.
Thanks, Tim. And then Jeremy, same question.
Yeah, for me, it's been about 20 years as well. And it's been a combination of both sales and technical roles. So when I started off in the industry, I actually managed a tech support group for an access control company. And I think that helped build a strong foundation of understanding how a lot of the tech stuff that we do today actually works and how we fix it and how we install it properly. And I think you'll see a lot of that coming out while I share some of these topics today. But I've been with HID and Mercury for, it was 2014 to 2021. And then I took a short stint away and they pulled me right back. And now I'm doing what I love and talking about Mercury.
And then kind of jumping in at the broadest level, what are some of the problems that K-12 and higher education institutions face in terms of building access control?
Tim, do you want to take that since you work so closely with higher ed?
Yeah, one of the things, that we see, in these industries and in these verticals is focus now around how do we protect buildings, protect our security? How do we secure entry points and those type of things? K through 12, you would think that they are similar, but in very many aspects, they can be completely opposite on what the focus is in K through 12 and what the focus is in the higher education vertical. When I talk about higher education, I like to equate these institutions as mini cities, right? In some cases, you have thousands of students and staff and faculty. You may have systems that have been in place for 20, 30 years or longer. Everyone's buying mixtures of hardware and software and all these different solutions for their particular business unit or their stakeholders on campus, right? Through all these years, there was never really a clear direction on thinking of solutions to work for the whole campus. And now you're starting to see these things come into play with Mercury and mobile credentials and biometrics and software and hardware and cloud and how to get all of this stuff to work together. So it becomes a very exciting time on these campuses to really just educate what's out there, what's in the best interest of these institutions to set them up for the future.
Yeah, Tim, I would agree with that. I think today we're seeing this combination of all this different type of technology coming together, and our customers are having to look at overall experience of how their users use access control. It's not just a tool for letting people through the door or locking people out or locking down a building. It's a solution that solves additional problems and shares data and has cybersecurity components. So there's so much more than what it was, I would say, 10, 15 years ago. And I think this is requiring customers to need to understand their needs more and be able to define what their needs are in plain text, and then come to different manufacturers and integrators and consultants and folks that have tied all of these together and give them the chance to build solutions that are going to be interoperable and solve actual business problems that they may have.
And then moving into specifics a little bit, why Mercury?
I think from a high level, and then I'll throw it to Jeremy because his expertise is second to none. But, when we talk about Mercury now, it really gives customers freedom through an open and proven controller platform, supports a broad ecosystem of access control partners. So you're really not locked into a single vendor or a proprietary system. That openness really protects the investment, which is hugely beneficial this day and age with all the technology changing, right? It is improving long-term flexibility. It's strengthening the overall, cyber posture, and it's just really positioning institutions, whether that's a university, whether a K through 12 school district or any other vertical, to really give them plenty of choices, interoperability, and flexibility for whatever comes next in the next 3, 5, 10 years. Jeremy?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. The open message, I think, is critical. So when we say open, we don't necessarily mean open source. People aren't going out to GitHub and downloading Mercury firmware and putting it on any device they want. But what it means is it means that end users have the choice. So Mercury works with around 35 different access control solutions or software platforms. And all of those systems, they use exactly the same components from Mercury. So that enables a customer to start with, let's say, software platform A. And today that may solve their needs and their requirements. But 5 years down the road, they may have a different set of needs. They may evolve and they may need to change platforms. But with Mercury, they're able to keep that hardware on the wall and just repoint that hardware to another solution. I actually it was one of our partners. He, I think, described this perfectly. And this was in relation to the opposite of what Mercury is, which is proprietary systems. And he said, Jeremy, you would never get on a road or a highway that had no exits. And that kind of struck me. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I would never get on that road if I could never get off that road. And that's what proprietary systems do. They lock customers in, they trap them to a specific vendor, they hold them hostage over time. And Mercury solves all that by giving the customer freedom and choice.
What best practices do you recommend when migrating to the Mercury controllers?
So, Tim, I'll maybe start with this.
Yeah, go for it.
I think when we talk about migrating to Mercury, it's less about Mercury and more about the ecosystem. So the customer that is looking to move to Mercury, they should pick a platform that solves their needs. So let's say in the higher education space, there's a need for typically a one card solution. So how does that one card solution integrate or communicate with access control system? And you should probably pick a software solution in access control that works nicely with your one card solution. And then Mercury just kind of comes along with it, right? And you get the proven architecture and the cybersecurity that comes along with it. But as an end user, I think when you're looking to migrate, start with your software platform first, and then make sure that that software platform supports this open architecture and Mercury controllers, and then you just kind of bring us along with it. But Tim, what do you see from customers that you work with? Why are they migrating, and what are some of those best practices that you've heard?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the answer in what we said on the first question, right? They're looking for choice, interoperability, flexibility in the future. Many schools and institutions have known, only one way for so long. And the other thing that's kind of driving this around Mercury and everything it enables is a lot of this stuff now is focused on like cloud and encryption and security, cybersecurity, physical security, right? And all of a sudden, bringing all that together is becoming a more IT centric project, especially on universities. And I can imagine, pretty much any vertical. IT becomes a massive focus for this. And cybersecurity plays obviously a major role there. And what Mercury is doing in this landscape is really elevating that security level for many campuses, and I think many of them are now seeing the true value of what Mercury can do.
Taking it just a step further, if we have any listeners from any kind of smaller universities or universities that have kind of been locked into their current system for a long time, and they've been looking for a change and they've been looking for a little more openness, what are some steps that they can take, kind of practical logistic steps to kind of tip that first domino over to start making that shift?
Yeah, so I think it's probably a good inventory of what they have. So there are other controllers that are on that open spectrum, and they may have some of those controllers already in place. So their migration to a new platform doesn't always necessarily mean they have to do a 100% rip and replace. So they shouldn't be overly fearful every single time, because often they can reuse a lot of what they have. And then through a migration process and through a schedule, they can update that hardware to take advantage of the cyber component. So I would say step number one is inventory the types of hardware and controllers and readers that you have and credentials that you have. And then from there, we can draw a clear path of what that migration looks like. And then the second step is identifying what software platform solves your needs and gives you the integrations that you need and gives you the video and the analytics that come with it that you're hoping for. And then we can plug all of that together and give you a nice package and solution that solves all your problems.
Okay, I was wondering, next up, I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about TLS 1.3 and kind of why the audience should care and why that's a major topic of discussion in kind of these broader level conversations.
Yeah, and I'll take this one. Let's nerd out for a second. So this is going to be very IT heavy focused, but we'll try to simplify it. So TLS, we all use TLS, transport layer security, every single day when we're on the internet and when we're doing online banking. All of that is protected behind the scenes with TLS. And there's a few different versions of TLS. There's 1.1, there's 1.2, and now the latest and greatest today is 1.3. So why do we care and what does it actually do? So when we are establishing a connection over the network, we want that connection to be encrypted. The problem, though, is we need a simple way of sharing what our encryption keys are going to be. So if Tim and I were going to talk, we would have to have some mutual agreement that we're going to encrypt our communication with encryption key X, right? But I can't just on this call say, Tim, our encryption key is X, because now everybody listening, they know that encryption key is X. So if we're sending encrypted data, they can decrypt it with encryption key X. So what TLS does is it gives us a secure way of communicating what our encryption key needs to be over a secure method. So there's wrappers in there, and there's ways that we can secure that encryption key that we're calling X. and I can pass it over the network. And if somebody steals that encrypted blob, then they can't do anything with it. So TLS is really a handshake that allows us to share what our encryption key is going to be. And the reason why this is important is when hackers or bad actors are attempting to do some sort of cyber attack, they often go through the network port of devices. So the controller could be the device, or your air conditioning unit that has a network connection could be the entry point to your network. And what they'll do is they'll get in and then they'll hijack the conversation. They might install malware. They might install viruses or lock your system down and force you to pay money to open your system back up and gain access. So this is where you're seeing a lot of the folks, they're being tied up and being forced to pay Bitcoin or some sort of cryptocurrency to unlock their system and decrypt all their files. So TLS 1.3 eliminates that risk. And then older versions of TLS, that risk is still there. So when working on a system that's connecting to the network, best practices use TLS 1.3. We can then share our encryption keys in a secure method. We know people aren't hijacking that, and they're not causing havoc within your network or within your environment.
OSDP has been around for many years now. Why should customers be using OSDP and specifically the secure channel?
I'll start and then flip it over to Jeremy. The simple explanation is it exists to fix the biggest weakness, or some may say one of the biggest weaknesses of legacy readers to controller communication. And it helps make modern access really more controllable, secure, manageable, future-proof, anything you want to say there. And the reality is OSDP secure channel encrypts the communication between the reader and the controller, right? So similar to some of the stuff that Jeremy was talking about, you're protecting against credential sniffing, replay attacks, device tampering, and Wiegand, which is still used, and Jeremy might tell me like 95% of access control deployments offers really none of these protections. And if you're looking to, new systems, new access control software, putting hardware, like when you're doing these type of migrations now, secure channel should really be the default choice.
Yeah, that's right. And so secure, or OSDP in general, has been around since the early 2000s. And here we are still talking about it today. But one of the barriers to entry or adoption for OSDP was, in order for it to work, your reader needs to support OSDP, your controller needs to support OSDP, and your software, your access control software, needs to support OSDP. And in the past, there was usually one of those missing components. So maybe your controller and your software supported it, but your reader didn't. Or maybe your reader did, but your controller didn't. And then you couldn't use it. But at this point, any new controller that you get, any new reader that you get, any new piece of access control software that you get, it supports OSDP. So this really becomes more of an exercise of configuration than having to specify something really unique. It's all there by default. We just need to turn it on. And like what Tim was saying, the benefit of OSDP Secure Channel is it encrypts the communication between the reader and the controller. So somebody can't put a sniffer device in there. There's videos on YouTube that you can find where somebody will pull the reader off the wall. They'll put this little sniffing device in. They'll tuck it back inside the wall so you don't know it's there. And that's just their listening. Every time you swipe a badge, it's collecting all of your badge ID information. And then you can connect to that device with an app on your phone or through Wi-Fi, and you can do a replay attack. So I swipe my badge, I type my PIN in, and then the bad person comes. They connect to that little sniffer device. They see my badge, they see my PIN in plain Wiegand data, and then they do a replay attack and the door opens. So OSDP Secure Channel prevents that by encrypting that communication.
Jeremy, I've heard someone reference this, and you tell me if it's accurate. OSDP secure channel turns readers from dumb edge devices like into trusted endpoints.
Yeah, that's completely true. With Weekend, it's all just one-way communication. So the reader is just sending information to the controller, but it doesn't get any sort of response or notification that the data made it to the controller. And the controller doesn't actually know if there's a reader out there because it's not two-way communication. And OSDP solves that. So you get the encryption part, but you also get supervision. So I know if my reader's communicating. And if it's not, you get a notification, right? So if a student were to pull that reader off the wall and they're just messing around, you would get notification in your software saying somebody's messing with your reader, pay attention. And then same thing if there's a tamper on there. So if they do pull the tamper off, you would get notification. But then outside of security and being more aware, there's this really big component of OSDP that allows customers to be incredibly more efficient. OSDP gives you the ability to push updates to the devices at the edge, so your readers, let's say. So if you needed to make a change on your reader, or if you needed to update firmware on your reader, instead of going to each individual reader one by one, step by step, you can now just from a centralized server say, update my readers, and you get that new firmware, you get that configuration change. So that process alone, it starts saving customers money, and it shows immediate ROI that you would never get with Weekend. So you get all these extra benefits of security, but then it saves you money in the long run as well.
What is Mercury's new embedded application environment about?
Yeah, this is one thing that really, I think, separates Mercury from a lot of the other controller options out on the market. So we have the ability today to give customers or OEM partners or integrators or application developers, they can write their own applications and have that application live on our controller. And then it can make decisions alongside access control or alongside information that's stored on the controller, and can solve unique problems that we could never solve in the past. And so I'm just going to make up a couple. These don't actually exist yet, but here's the concept or the idea of what somebody may want to make. So I came up with the idea if you're in Tornado Valley and if a tornado is coming through, you would probably want to know, and I'm sure that these schools know that tornadoes are coming through, but there's probably no tie-in to their access control system. So if their standard operating procedures to lock all the front doors and a tornado is coming through and there's students outside, well, it's possible they could be stuck outside. So what if an app was developed to monitor the National Weather Service? And if a tornado was coming through, then maybe certain doors on campus would automatically open and allow people to shelter in place and be safe without any interaction or having somebody go into the software and unlock the front doors. So it can allow us to tie into third-party systems that maybe we monitor separately and then automatically do things within the access control system. So that's maybe one example. Another example could be more related to the overall health and IT health of a system. So as we're talking things like TLS and OSDP, there's things called digital certificates that get loaded to these devices. And we really become like an IoT device at that point. So maintaining that and updating the certificates and having good password policy and rolling passwords, that becomes a pretty important thing that if you talk to an IT person, they're just used to doing, like their routers and switches, they roll passwords and they have certificates that they control and they can manage. But in access control, we don't have a good way of doing that really today. So what people are starting to do is write applications that live on the controller, and the controller then can report out its health information or its certificate status or its password status to this third-party app that lives on the board. And then you could connect to that over an IP address or a web page, and you could maybe push updates to role passwords or update certificates. So it allows us to do a lot of unique things. Tim, I heard of one of the customers that you work with in the higher ed space. He said, maybe I could use this for my dining experience. I have these point of sale terminals that cost a lot of money that all they do is it just enables somebody to tap in and say, I'm here at my dining hall to take advantage of my dining plan. And it deducts a credit from their dining plan. But the actual units themselves are thousands of dollars. So he said, well, what if I just put a normal access control HID signal reader out on the wall? And then I wrote an application that lived on the controller that talked to my POS dining software. And then when somebody swiped, it would open the gate and it would update the dining hall software. So now he's not having to buy a multiple $1,000 device for every entry point into these dining halls, and he can solve unique problems and save money. But it's all about taking an application, putting it directly on the controller, and allowing that to make decisions alongside access control.
Yeah, I remember that conversation with that school, and listening to Jeremy talk there, Matt. It's like there's many things that can come from this now with this application environment. Like, think of these use cases. You get these, brilliant people working at universities, and they're already thinking like, what use case could I really leverage this for? And that is a great example, and we're going to see a lot more coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, I'm thinking like it could be like fuel management. It could be access to maybe locations in the summer for people that are visitors to the school. So I don't know. My recommendation to customers is identify a couple of areas where you could be more efficient or where you waste a lot of time and energy keeping systems in sync. And then we can figure out ways to automate that through an application on the board.
How does this whole extensive ecosystem of OEM partners help enable change?
I think it goes back to really everything we've been talking about today. It gives customers real choice across software, hardware, and all the different vertical solutions out there. This is a critical, this is critical in the industry right now. It's critical for all these different verticals as folks are kind of really making the shift towards cloud and hybrid access control solutions, right? Allowing organizations to really adopt new architectures at their own pace, right? You don't have to do everything all at once. You can transition on your terms. And then we have all these partners that are helping driving this end user experience. People like to say, whether it's student experience, customer experience, end user experience, you hear all the terms, but through various means of mobile credentials, frictionless access, all the deeper integrations that they're looking at. And at the end of the day, everybody is trying to modernize. Everybody's trying to improve the experiences, respond to new security threats, whether that's cyber, and then really trying to do all this without replacing all the hardware on the wall all the time for rip and replace. And I think all these industries we're at a very critical juncture where they're taking a step back and being able to identify a lot of these trends now and saying, hey, what is the best solution for my vertical, for my industry, and for my institution, and really set them on a path for the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah, when you look at our OEM partners, the 35 different access control systems that work with Mercury, the unique thing is they all go to market slightly different. Their solutions are slightly different. So, I've seen this push or demand for a unified platform where video and intrusion and access and audio is all built by one manufacturer. And there's a good handful of our partners that can do that. So you get that capability of having a unified platform, one pane of glass to manage everything without needing to do third-party integrations everywhere. But your hardware, the most expensive part of your system that you're putting on the wall, that can be used across the board interchangeably. So maybe that unified platform today solves all your problems, but 3 years from now, who knows what this world's going to look like in 3 years with the development of AI and quantum computing. Things are going to change faster than I think we have ever experienced before in our lives. So as that change happens and as the industry evolves, that same hardware that you have on the wall can point to the next system that has evolved faster or has a better solution. So whether it's you want cloud today, there's a great list of OEM partners that give cloud. Whether it's you need a one card provider integration, there's a great list of partners there that give that. Whether you want video and access all in one by the same company, there's partners that do that. So again, your user experience is probably what dictates that. And Mercury is just the foundation that gives you long-term freedom and choice.
I think that's a really great way to kind of sum up all the different themes that we've talked about today. And we are kind of coming up on the end of time. But I did want to ask really quickly if there were any other last words or last thoughts that you'd like to get in before we wrap up.
I'll start, Tim. I'm going to take that phrase from that OEM partner. Don't get stuck on a highway without any exits. I think that's pretty impactful. Don't buy a house where you can never refinance your mortgage. Don't get yourself stuck in a corner when paying for the most expensive thing when it comes to access control, and that's the controllers that go on the wall.
Yeah, and I mean, just kind of piggybacking off that, as I view this world that I've been focused on within higher education, a lot of things that are happening in every aspect of this, from hardware, software, mobile credentials, biometrics, everybody's looking for choice, flexibility, and operability. And when you think about Mercury and the platform and everything that we discussed today, it truly sets everything apart. We don't know what this world is going to look like, to Jeremy's point, what AI is going to do and all this kind of stuff. But it's helping you position yourself for a better future.
And unfortunately, that is about all the time that we have for today. One more time, thanks so much to our guests, Timothy Nyblom from HID Global and Jeremy Fromm from Mercury Security. Thanks to our listeners for downloading or streaming this podcast. And don't forget to pass it along to a friend if you found it helpful. And finally, thanks also to the sponsor of this episode, HID Global. I'm Matt Jones, and we'll see you next time on Schools in Focus.